Welcome to Y Nada Más, a Real Madrid podcast.
All right, everybody, what is going on? And welcome back to another episode of Y Nada Más, a Real Madrid podcast. I am your host, Eric Rivera. And what else can be said? It was a terrible weekend for us Madridistas. Definitely, just a bad game. A bad game from Real Madrid. It was not a good game at all. I was kind of already worried going into this game because Villarreal seems to always put us through our paces, even though I believe I was reading the stat that Villarreal hadn't won a game against Madrid in like 9 previous attempts, something like that. It was always it's always been draws. We always seem to get draws against Villarreal. They always seem to be a nightmare. And then to add insult to injury, with Villarreal defeating us over the weekend at the La Cerámica, we actually have to face them again for Copa Del Rey. Again, in Villarreal. So that's going to be interesting. It was a lackluster affair, I would say, a lackluster affair from Real Madrid. Would I put it as one of the worst performances I've ever seen from Real Madrid? No, because I think what some people, what the naysayers and the haters, I think the self-hating Madridistas, as I like to call some of you guys that seem to blow everything out of proportion after a loss, is that you're actually discounting the fact that Villarreal played pretty well. To be honest with you, they played very well. Gerard Moreno is obviously back from. Gerard Moreno surprised me quite a bit, as did Juan Foyth. And so you get this thing where it's a combination. They're already firing on all cylinders because of the fact that they're in a new stadium. Well, not in a new stadium, but in a remodeled stadium. They're facing Real Madrid, and they always seem to come alive against us, which kind of sucks because they always come alive against us, but then seem to sort of bend over backwards to please Barcelona for some reason. And it just happens that I feel like everybody as of late comes out guns blazing against Real Madrid, maybe because of the fact that, we've won La Liga, that because we've won the Champions League. And then everybody seems to underestimate Barcelona because Barcelona is sort of this team that seems to be chugging, sort of difficultly along, while Real Madrid, has these amazing performances and then all of a sudden drops stinkers all the time. And I think we've honestly not seen Real Madrid perform. In my opinion, we've not seen Real Madrid perform well since coming back. And then even before the break, even before we went out for what was it, the World Cup, right? Even before then, I think we were kind of in a bad way, or we were starting to look sort of lackluster here and there, before the break. And it seems like it's just been kind of, we had that performance against Leipzig. We dropped points against them. Obviously, we had other stuff. We didn't stumble against Celtic, but obviously it was a Celtic that was pretty much already done and dusted, but it's it hasn't been a convincing run. And then aside from that, we were doing things without Benzema. Bringing back Benzema was supposed to, I think, add some fire to this. But obviously he is not, and I'm not talking shit about Benzema because, I love the guy and I think, I'll always be loyal to him for what he's done for Real Madrid, despite people wanting him out of the club at some point, despite people in the media saying that he was milking his injury or his injury issue in order to stay healthy for the World Cup. And then we saw that he didn't even get to play in the World Cup because of his injury issue, also with other issues that were going on there with the French national team. But aside from that, people were already hating on him and saying that he was some sort of mercenary because he didn't want to play. But obviously, there's a lot of stuff that happened. The injury had to have been, I wouldn't say devastating, but it had to obviously be an actual injury because we haven't seen Benzema back in his best at all. Since being away due to injury, then obviously the World Cup break. I'm pretty sure mentally all of this stuff that happened in the World Cup or whatever happened between him and Deschamps and all this bullshit that you see going on supposedly with him and some people on the French national team, whether it's Hugo Lloris or Griezmann or whatever this whole issue is with who the leaders are within that team, and then you have a bunch of other stuff going on there with the federation bad mouthing Zidane, as we heard today. Like, it's just craziness. I don't understand how the French have this ability to perpetually, when it comes to having chemistry, it's just like they have a great team, but a team that seems to not have proper chemistry. They're just full of talent, but they seem to not have proper chemistry in the dressing room. And even though they have a lot of this talent, and the thing is, there's the crazy thing about France is that they're so incredibly talented that despite what we've heard of the issues that they have in the dressing room, and despite the issues of injuries when they lost out on a multitude of players before the World Cup, they still made it to the final. And they could have possibly won it had, I think, these players, like the Nkunkus, Kimpembe, these other players that were not N'Golo Kante, all these guys that did not play because and that have been major parts of this French national team. If those guys had been part of the team, and then of course Benzema, if those guys been part of the team, who knows how far they could have gone, or if they would have gone obviously further and lifted up the cup. But that's neither here nor there. It's just the fact that going back, I think a lot of this stuff has probably affected Benzema. Not saying that he's so. I think he's a mentally strong dude, but definitely something seems off about him, and it could be the injury. It could be we're seeing him miss chances that normally he doesn't miss or hasn't missed for years. Some of them were just straight up, and the thing, it goes again to what I was saying, which was Villarreal performed admirably. Foyth was able to stay, and keep Vinicius at bay. Vinicius has also been another player that hasn't looked as good, since coming back from the World Cup, although I still think he is our danger man. I still think, it's the ability that Vinicius has, the ability that Vinicius has to not ever give up on trying to take on people is what makes him so dangerous, because it's the same thing that I was actually listening to, other pundits talk about, Eden Hazard, and obviously what all of us saw against Cacereño, which was an absolutely dismal display by this player that was an amazing player, for the longest time. He was an incredible player, and to see somebody downfall so hard and just has not been able to, be the player that he was at Chelsea, at Real Madrid. Part of it, I blame, he has nobody else to blame but himself. But one of the things the pundits were saying that you can see is his downfall is that you no longer see Hazard even attempt to take on defenders anymore. You don't even try to see him dribble at defenders anymore. Maybe because he himself, an athlete knows his own body, right? So if these athletes are so in tune with their own skill set, with their own abilities, that he definitely has to know that he no longer has the pace, and maybe, whatever it is, whatever the surgery was that was done on his ankle, on his foot, he just doesn't have enough confidence in himself anymore to do those take-ons and go for it. So he's always looking, and this is one of the things that the pundit was saying, was he's always looking for a way out. Always looking for a way out of having to take on those guys. So he's looking for the 1-2 passes and that kind of situation, and looking for those associations, when he wasn't brought on for that. He was brought on to do essentially what Vinicius is doing right now. And why I want to bring it back to Vinicius, which is the fact that Vinicius still has, regardless of what people may think about him and what you guys might think about, some people and whether he's falling back on his old form and all that kind of stuff. But what Vinicius has that will continue to be an asset to Real Madrid, no matter how many times, even if he doesn't score or not, is that ability to be so, I would just say, in a way, like I would always used to say, it is actually like positively reckless. It's reckless, but in a positive way, chaotic in a positive way, that he just continues to try to go at defenders. He continues to try new things. Sometimes they don't come off, sometimes they do, and he scores a banger, or he sets somebody else up. If it wasn't for Vinicius, you wouldn't have gotten, some of the goals that were scored in the World Cup, like Richarlison's, bicycle kick. All of these things were Vinicius essentially running at defenses. Vinicius trying to be the difference maker, at least trying to make plays happen. And it's because he's got that spirit, essentially, that I feel like he's going to continue to be an asset, and things will fall back into place. So before I get into all that, because I don't want to go off on a tangent here and not get other things out of the way. Like I said, guys, 2023, we're back with a vengeance here at Y Nada Más Podcast. I refuse. One of the things was, I've been off and on, and I refuse to be that way. And I want to make sure that this podcast continues to grow. And I've received some very nice comments from some people, both on YouTube and then, to the email, and to the DMs. And it's actually been, quite cool to see that, you guys are saying, Eric, stick with it. It just takes time. Obviously we want to grow this thing. And the thing is, I think it's difficult because, I'm a 40-year-old dude, although I don't look it, or I hope I don't look it. I'm a 40-year-old dude, just turned 40. I got 2 kids. I have another job that has nothing to do with football. But because of that job, I'm able to do, these things and have essentially create what I can create. I have a background essentially in different sports. As you guys know, I've spoken about it before in fighting, and I had that, and I've had podcasts before where I discussed the fighting sports, kickboxing, Muay Thai, MMA, and that was my passion for the longest time. But my deep down passion has always been football, and it has always been Real Madrid. Now, one of the things is, you can always go and say, I just want to make a football podcast and talk about everything, right? But I feel like there is very few podcasts that talk about Real Madrid solely in English. I think there's only about 3 or 4 of us that actually do it, or a handful, essentially. Obviously, one's very large, which is Managing Madrid. Then you have Let's Be Real. Then you have the Madridista Roundabout. I don't know if they're still sticking with it, but essentially, I want to continue to stick with it. I want to be an outlet for fans that speak English, that are maybe trying to learn Spanish, because I do know Spanish. Because I could easily do a podcast in Spanish, but number one, I'm not in Spain, and there's tons of news out there from the Spanish media about Real Madrid, and there always will be. But in English, it's only touched upon somewhat because we share a common language with the Premier League, and this is me coming from the United States, because we share a common language with England and the Premier League. That seems to be what a lot of podcasts in the English-speaking world will focus on, which is the Premier League. And I don't want to focus only on that. I want to focus on Real Madrid. I feel like Real Madrid should do more outreach, essentially, in English. I've even talked with my good friend Jota, who has his podcast or has his own channel, Jota Real Madrid, where he talks to Jose Felix Diaz. He talks with Edu Aguirre. He talks with a lot of guys from El Chiringuito. He also talks with a lot of journalists from Spain on his show in Spanish, and he was based here in the United States, but now he's back in Spain. So I'm able to speak with him and get some ideas from him. But even he says, that it's a good thing to do sort of this outreach in English, although a lot of people are bilingual. So essentially, a lot of you that follow Real Madrid probably some of you speak Spanish, and then or some of you are, lingual, essentially speak both languages, but maybe prefer to get your information in English. So that is my goal, is to continue, being an English language outlet for Real Madrid. And I guess the one thing that I've liked is that it's been appreciated by a lot of you guys that are out there. I mean, I know the fan base is in India, Bangladesh, the Middle East, Africa, even in Europe, in other countries in Europe where English, where they English might not be the first language, but they're trying to get information about Real Madrid either in English or in their local language. It's not easy to find, so I hope to be that outlet for that. So with that said, guys, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. That would be something that will help greatly. So subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you're listening right now on audio, man, please make sure you go to the YouTube channel. Check us out at Nada Mas Podcast on YouTube. You can find us there. You can find the video version of the podcast. What I'm doing a lot now on the podcast is I'm throwing up, images and different things like that. Like I said, I'm going to do live streaming at least once a month of the podcast. I'm also going to try and bring other people now that we're back from the holidays. Trying to get my good friend Tron back on here. Helal, Hota himself, other people that I want to bring on board also to write things. So if you're interested in writing, if you're interested in being more involved, want to maybe jump on the podcast, think you have something to talk about on the podcast, hit us up, info@inadamas.net, so that we can try and put you on the show. And, we can have a chat here about Real Madrid and what's going on with Real Madrid. So check us out on all of the social media platforms. At Inadamas on Twitter, which is where I am most active, and that is actually me on Twitter. Then on Facebook, obviously, Facebook at Inadamas Podcast. We post things up there, but it's not like it's something that we're consistently on, although we have a pretty good following on Facebook. On Instagram, YNM Podcast, we're throwing up, graphics and different things that we've been making. My graphic designer makes. I personally love Instagram. It seems like a lot of people, I don't know, I think it's a different place to sort of, the fan base on there doesn't seem to be as active because I only have 90 followers. We only have 90 followers on the Instagram for Inada Mas. So if you can help us out with that and just give us some love there, it's at YNM Podcast. And in addition to that, of course, I'm trying to reach 1,000 subscribers on Inada Mas Podcast on YouTube. So please help me out there, guys. You would be helping me out tremendously. You would be helping us out tremendously, because that's when we can start trying to maybe monetize this thing and make some money off of it. And in that regard, bring you guys bigger and better content as we start growing in there. So, but the idea is to keep plugging away, I don't want to put this behind a paywall. That's not my interest. I make money in other ways. I have, like I said, I have a regular day job. I do other things, completely different things than this. If I can end up making a living just following Real Madrid, that would be, a dream come true. But, the reality of the situation is that's not the reality. I'm just here as a fan, and I just want to talk about Madrid with all of you. So that is where I'll leave that. So info@inadamas.net if you're interested in joining us to maybe write some articles for the website, jump on the podcast every once in a while, that kind of stuff. And everywhere else, follow us on Twitter, follow us on Instagram, follow us on Facebook. And of course, if you are listening, you're already listening to your favorite podcast subscriber or whatever. But we're on Spotify, we are on Stitcher, we are on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, really wherever podcasts are found. So that's that. So anyway, going back to the game, like I said, Villarreal was actually, going back to the game, it was shit. It was shit, but it wasn't total shit, because I think I saw a lot of people reacting, and it's always this very, very reactionary reaction. Which is like, oh, we're shit, we're garbage, every player sucks, we're terrible, blah, 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 just keep blah, 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 blah. And it's like, in professional sports, you can't win them all. Sometimes you're going to lose. Even a great team like Real Madrid is going to lose. Long gone are the days where we're dominating teams and we're destroying them 7-0. Right now, maybe down the line, if we get Mbappe, is all forgiven with him? Who knows? But I think I'd forgive him now, as much as I hate myself for saying it. I was so angry. I even called him a rat on Twitter. If the dude really wants to come and we need him, we want to win, you come and you get him. You know what I mean? And, he's proven, I think, in a lot of ways that he's sort of, in a push-pull relationship with PSG. Obviously they're offering him a lot of money, then he's got a lot of pressure on him. There's a lot of pressure on the kid. Florentino himself even said it. There's a lot of pressure, on this kid from Macron, from his parents, from the Qatari, group and all this kind of stuff. There's so much stuff going on from France, I guess. There's so much stuff, pressure on him, but there seems to be deep down inside a guy who legitimately loves Real Madrid and wants to come here eventually, who legitimately loves Zidane, loves Cristiano Ronaldo, loves essentially, a lot of the players that have anything to do with Real Madrid. So the history essentially and the feeling behind Real Madrid. Obviously, he was dealt with a very tough decision. I don't want to protect him. I mean, I think, you could say, it's time to put your big boy pants on and go against, everything. But at 22 years old, I think a lot of people think, it's easier said than done. We'll see what happens. Hopefully he'll come. Hopefully we can get a guy like Haaland. Hopefully those days of getting another dominant force will happen, because unfortunately we don't have that anymore, guys. We don't have, right now we have Vinicius, we have Rodrigo, which I think are fantastic players. But Rodrigo doesn't feel, the Rodrigo that plays on the left wing is not the same Rodrigo that plays on the right wing. Where he became, where Rodrigo, really made his name was in the left wing. But unfortunately, he's sharing that same left wing with Vinicius. And then on the right wing, we really have nobody, because Gareth Bale is long gone. Asensio, my God, after that game and that play at the end of the game where he almost cost us a third goal, essentially, even though the game was done and dusted, but there was so much that he's done that I just think, yes, he scores some bangers and he scores some good play. He does some good things every once in a while and scores some goals, but the guy just doesn't have the desired output that you would expect from a team like Real Madrid. That's what you have to think. If you're thinking about like the time, the players that we've had in that position, the players that we've had and what are expected of players from Real Madrid, Asensio isn't the guy. Asensio isn't the guy, and we need to desperately find somebody else to fill in that spot. We've even done it by putting Valverde in that situation, which isn't his thing, and he's performed admirably when we put him there. But there has to be another option there. There's something else. I think even Sergio Arribas is something I've been hearing. People are even saying, we'd rather have Sergio Arribas be given a chance in the first team and giving him that opportunity to play there rather than Asensio and see what he can do if given the opportunity. But this really, the thing is, so in the game against Villarreal, I would say everybody on the team played pretty lackluster. Benzema, aside from scoring the penalty, wasn't, he missed the sitter, but essentially, thankfully, that the penalty was called because, I wouldn't say it was so much a sitter. It was a crowded in the box, but Raúl Albiol from Villarreal performed admirably the entire game. Juan Foyt was very good. Gerard Moreno was very good. They just played very well. And the thing is, you combine that with a team like Real Madrid that was just not playing well. Mendy basically made a huge mistake, which cost us the first goal. Alaba, which I can't really blame him for that. It was a penalty in the box. Those handballs are going to be called. Essentially, they gave one to Juan Foyt. They gave one to David Alaba. Even though I don't agree with the kind of that, it's like something has to be done with the handballs because, he has the funny thing is, I'm wondering, had David Alaba's hand stayed on the ground and him not try to get up and it hits his hand while he's on the ground, then you wouldn't get a penalty, but it's when he tries to get back up and then avoids the ball hitting his hand that it essentially gets called, So it's like, when is it a handball? When is it in a handball? Like at this point, we're saying, are all handballs in the box, essentially a penalty? Because we've seen that it doesn't always go that way, and then they're talking about intent, but now it's like it doesn't really have to be intent. It's insanity, right? Because then you could say, but the thing is, if they gave, I can't really complain. I'm not really going to complain about that decision because, although I think it's wrong, we got, I would say that handball that they gave on Foyt, even though, yes, it's a handball, that's a really soft call too for a handball. And they just need to figure out what's going on as much as it helped us. But Villarreal dominated the game in the first half. It wasn't a good look. It wasn't a good look. If I look at the stats, if I was looking at the stats, essentially, like there was, the expected goals for Villarreal were 3.05 to Real Madrid's 2.26. And you don't even have to look at the stats to, like, the eye test alone would tell you that in the first half we were being dominated. It looked really like Villarreal was the one controlling everything, essentially. They outshot us 17-13. Shots on target were 5-3. They scored 2 of those. We scored 1 of those, essentially. And shots inside the box were about the same. They even took more shots from outside the box. Obviously, Baena was taking a lot of cracks on goal. Courtois saved us a couple different times. Statistically, if you were looking at it, they won more tackles in their defense. They intercepted more. They cleared more balls. The keeper had more saves. Courtois had more saves than Pepe Reina had, so that tells you something. So essentially, it just, even in stats wise, they really were dominating us completely. Even though we had more of the, essentially, it goes back to that thing again, we had more of the passes, essentially. We had more accurate passes. We actually missed more big chances. The chances made were about the same, essentially, but all these statistics showed that essentially the team was, they were very, very, in essence, they edged us. They edged us out a little bit in the game, and that proved to be what caused the scoreline to be the scoreline. It was 2-1. It was 2-1, and it was just that slight difference that caused it. We came alive and did better, much better in the second half. Sure, it was 1-1, and that was a way to get back into it, and then it was unlucky. But, luck favors the bold, as they say. And, they came back and they were able to get something, make plays that essentially would get them into positions and to get that penalty. And that's kind of the luck of the draw. And even if they didn't get that penalty, we would get 1-1. It would have been a tie game and essentially be the same situation over and over again with Real Madrid and Villarreal, which is that we just seem to not be able to beat these guys. And that's the fear going into Copa del Rey, because we got probably the hardest draw. Well, Barcelona got one of the easiest draws, essentially a team that's, I think, the only team left from the third division. Barcelona got them, in Ceuta or whatever they're called. And we got Villarreal. But it is a good opportunity, and that's why I'm saying for the naysayers and the people that are self-hating Madridistas, it is a good time for Real Madrid to go back to the drawing board and try to get the result that they need against Villarreal. And then obviously we're going to see how things play out this week when we face, I think we have to face Valencia is who I think we face next. Let me throw that up on the screen. I believe we face Valencia next. Let's take a look here. So we face Valencia next on Wednesday, January 11th. Today is the January the 8th. We face Valencia on the 11th. That for the Supercopa, which is going to be in Saudi Arabia. So we have to face them. Face them this week. Then we get a break from, the fixtures, and then we have to face Villarreal. So we need to basically, get back into winning ways against Valencia, which I think is a big opportunity because Valencia has not been in the best form lately. And they have not been the Valencia of old. So we definitely should be beating that team. And then we have to face Villarreal. And the thing is, the games don't get easy from here. This is going to be a very difficult time for Real Madrid. Our next fixtures are Valencia away from home. Essentially, we're going to be in Saudi Arabia. Villarreal at home again for the Copa del Rey for the round of 16. Hopefully we take that because Copa del Rey is one that seems to be eluding us all the time. Then we face Athletic Club in San Mamés, who are again on fire lately. They've been playing very well. Then we face Real Sociedad, who are also on the up and up again. And then we face Valencia again. So we have essentially 5 games in a row that are not at all easy. We get a break against Mallorca in February, Elche in February, Osasuna, which isn't a slouch either because it's going to be at El Sadar before we face Liverpool at Anfield for the Champions League on February 21st. So it is going to be a time of suffering, Madridistas, because this team is really going to be tested, and we're going to have to see how things are going to play out. Are we going to make any signings? Are we going to make any signings in the January window? I don't think anything is going to happen because really what is out there on the market to get right now that could potentially help us for any of these games? Nothing. So we have to stick with what we have right now and hope that Benzema refines his form in front of goal, that the goals start coming. We got to, that Valverde, because Valverde wasn't having a great game either. Mendy, I think Mendy, as much as I love him defensively, I think he doesn't offer anything else. And that has always been an issue, I think, for our left winger. We need somebody else that offers something there. There's been talk, there's been talk about all sorts of things. Obviously, what's this guy? The guy from, I forget, his name escapes me right now, but the player from Rayo Vallecano, who's essentially from Madrid's Cantera, from La Fábrica. So he's been somebody that they've talked about. I mean, our right back situation is one that's kind of scary. I actually didn't think Militao was that bad as a right back. He's played that position before, so I thought he was pretty decent, but obviously he's not going to make up for a Carvajal. Lucas Vázquez is definitely someone that, in a pinch, we have to use him. And sometimes he'll come, he'll make good, but it's been a lot less lately. So we're in dire straits when it comes to I feel like our fullbacks, or not I feel, just our fullback situation. You have another guy in David Alaba who used to play the left back position, who no longer is interested in playing the left back position. If anything, he feels, that's one thing where, are we going to try Camavinga at that position like they did with France? If anything, I feel like Camavinga injects, the one thing I have noticed and I feel like we need more of is that Camavinga injects more pace, more, I don't know, just it seems more pace, more excitement into the midfield when he's put onto the field. So I don't know whether you're going to take out Modric for him. Obviously Modric, Modric has played a lot of football already, and we're still in half of the season. So that's some guy that you want to rotate. As good as Modric is, and as much as I will love him and think he is the greatest midfielder, one of the greatest midfielders to ever grace football, you got to conserve that guy. Toni Kroos, we don't know. Is he going to stick around? What's going to happen with him? So Camavinga really solves your issues there. With Valverde, you're either going to have to play him as a right wing or you're going to have to bring him into the midfield. I think we need him more as a right winger because we don't have any other option on the right wing unless we bring in Sergio Arribas, which I doubt you're going to test him in these upcoming games. But Asensio is just, I don't want to say the word trash because he's not trash, obviously. But for this team, he's just not a fit anymore. And it's been a long time coming, of that being said, And, it was just, I'm just throwing up pictures here from the game. It was just, it was a rough game, man. I mean, it was rough. I mean, and to be honest, yes, I would say, naysayers are going to say, and guys that just want to talk trash are going to say, it was a terrible game, but you're discounting the fact that Villarreal actually played a very decent game and played very well against the Real Madrid, which wasn't playing very well. Were they playing absolute garbage? No. I think the way Real Madrid was playing against a team that wasn't Villarreal, and we would have scored. But Villarreal has been, on a streak, 5 wins. I believe this was their 6th in a row. And you can't expect to win these games all the time. But of course, fortune didn't smile upon us. Because unfortunately, here is the standings. But I don't think it's time to, I saw some people say, goodbye to La Liga and all this kind of stuff. And I think that's ridiculous when we're only in match day, match day 16, and there's still so many games to go. And Barcelona, yes, I think a lot of people were hoping that Atletico Madrid was going to win. They came out absolutely atrocious against Barcelona in the first half, and then it was Barcelona really just surviving for an entire game. And I thought for sure that Atletico was going to find the equalizer, and they couldn't find the equalizer. But this is a team, like, why are we depending on, that's the one thing that sucks. Why are we depending on a team that we absolutely despise too, which is Atletico Madrid, in helping us get points away from Barcelona? These are the things that we should be doing, so whether they win or lose should be beside the point for us. We should be winning the points that we need to. But there is a need. There is a need. I feel confident enough in our starting 11 to get us over the line when we need it, if they're performing well. But if they're not performing well, unfortunately, the problem is you look at the bench and you don't see anything else that you're happy about. The only people that you can bring on from the bench to make somewhat of a difference are Camavinga and Rodrigo. Those are the only guys you can make on the bench. If Rodrigo isn't starting, those are the only guys you can bring off the bench that I really feel are going to make any sort of difference to this team. It's not going to be Asensio. It's not going to be Lucas Vázquez. It's not going to be any of those guys. It's definitely not going to be Mariano. It's definitely not going to be Eden Hazard. None of those guys are going to make a difference. And that's the problem right now, is that we are spread so thin that our attacking options are virtually nil aside from Karim Benzema and Vinicius. Do I trust those two enough to win us games? 100% when they're playing well. But right now we've hit a rough patch, and this rough patch will happen, and it is a time for suffering. But to discount this team right now when we're 3 points behind Barcelona, who isn't playing well, they lucked out against Atletico Madrid. The problem is the rest of the teams in La Liga performing as well. But I tell you, a Real Betis will give Barcelona problems. I believe a Real Sociedad will give Barcelona problems, the current form they're in. I believe Athletic Bilbao can give them problems. I think Villarreal can give them problems. I think any other team right now in La Liga can give them problems. However, if they find form, you're also looking at those teams that are fighting up at the top there. You're looking at, the ability for Barcelona to lose points against the rest of the field is really, really, it's just La Liga's quality this season. At least when facing at the beginning of the season, there was really no one that was going to take points away from Barcelona. Right now, I feel like plenty of teams can take points away from Barcelona because they're just not finding their form yet. They have an erratic Dembélé. They have a Ferran Torres that, honestly is not a goal threat. Ansu Fati hasn't found his form again. Lewandowski's out for 2 more games. So anything can happen, guys. Things can flip very quickly. So let's keep the faith and essentially wait and see what happens. But obviously, Valencia is going to be a very important game because that's Supercopa de España, and we want to stay in that. We obviously want to win. We want to win. Start winning silverware. We need the win essentially against Valencia. We need to look better against Valencia in order to go into the next game of Copa del Rey against Villarreal with some, with some momentum. We also need to carry that momentum against Villarreal and look at it as a way to get back at them for the defeat of this past weekend. I mean, I'm trying to be positive, guys. As you can tell, it's going to be a difficult run these next few days. These next few weeks, these next few weeks of football are going to be very tough, Madridistas, and it's very scary, but I'm trying to stay positive and be like, don't discount this team just yet. We had a very, very tough, I forgot when it was, but we had a very, very tough run of games. Last season? Was it last season? We had a very tough run of games last season where I think it was like Sevilla, well, not the Sevilla we're dealing with now, but it was like Sevilla, Atletico, Madrid. I mean, it was like Sevilla, Atletico, Madrid, Real Sociedad, and we won all the games. We ended up winning all those games, or at least we got the points that we needed. So, and it was this exact same situation, this exact same team that we're dealing with right now. It was the exact same thing. So don't lose the faith. I think we can return from this. Games like this, stumbles are going to happen. It's happened before with Real Madrid. Being a Real Madrid fan is like this lately. We're not a dominating team that is like tearing, with Cristiano Ronaldo, coming, this Cristiano Ronaldo and a fit Benzema and a fit Gareth Bale and younger Toni Kroos, younger Modric, Marcelo, Casemiro, just coming, Sergio Ramos, all of these guys really just banging in goals. That's not happening right now, okay? And we have to realize that this team still, the way it is, won the Champions League. By the skin of our teeth, for sure. But it is one thing that this team can do is pull in that other way of phrasing this common phrase, which is, they clawed victory from the jaws of defeat, or they clawed defeat from the jaws of victory. You can even say either way, but that's what Real Madrid can do. They can consistently claw victory from the jaws of defeat. So they can always surprise us. And are we going to have our heart in our hands? Are you going to need a defibrillator and an oxygen mask nearby? Yes, because I think this is going to be a very, very tough couple of weeks for us Madridistas. Up until we get to, what is this? I think it's Elche. Up until we have to face Mallorca on February 5th. So guys, until February 5th, hold on to your butts. All right? Hold on to your butts. Hold on to your hats, whatever it is that you need to hold on to. Hold on to your nuts. Man up and get ready to feel some pain, because that's what's going to happen. That is what's going to happen. This is it's going to be tough. And with all that said, ladies and gentlemen, I mean, I think we might be coming to the end of this episode, but before I go, I really wanted to say thank you again for the support, guys. Thank you again for, telling me to continue on with the podcast, which I wasn't, ever thinking about stopping. Definitely very happy. And I think this is going to be, I want to continue on, and I want to make sure that it doesn't die out. And we're going to continue, bringing content and new things. And listen, if you're interested in helping out, I could definitely use the help. We got Trombach, we got Halal. I have a couple other people that are interested in writing and maybe jumping on the podcast. So if you're interested in maybe jumping on and maybe writing some stuff, hit me up at info@inadamas.net or hit me up via Twitter, as that is me, or hit me up DMs on Instagram, or hit me up, direct message on, we can't do it on Facebook because it's a Facebook business profile. But anyway, you know where to get me. All right, guys. So that is all I have to say. Thank you very much for joining the podcast again and for listening to the podcast. As always, listen, I ask really much, guys. We're trying to, big favor. We are really trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. That is the next milestone we want to hit on YouTube. So check us out on YouTube at Nada Mas Podcast. Throw some comments up there, throw some subscribers, tell your friends that there's this, crazy Madridista, that wants to continue talking about Madrid with people. So check me out there and, give us some comments and likes and subscriptions, and tell your friends to subscribe. So that's on Instagram. I'm sorry, that's on YouTube. For Apple Podcasts, please, the reviews, the comments, those help me rise up the ranks in Apple Podcasts. And then on Google, just, subscribe. Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, wherever you want to listen. And if you want to watch, of course, watch on the YouTube. Live streams will be once a month. I'll let you guys know before they happen. So make sure you follow on Nada Mas Podcast on Twitter, which is where most information is going to be, or at Nada Mas Podcast on Instagram. It's at YNM Podcast on Instagram, because they deleted my Instagram. La Liga did, because you can't put any freaking clips up without them losing their minds, and it's like a clip of like a split second of a goal, which is ridiculous. But anyway, God forbid we're trying to, make their product, market their product. But whatever. With that said, guys, so it's at YNM Podcast on Instagram. And thank you very much for listening. This podcast was shorter because obviously, there wasn't so much stuff to review, and we're just talking about Villarreal and Real Madrid, and the game was shit, and then Barcelona won to make it, to add things, and they're 3 points ahead. But fuck it, we're gonna come back, guys, so don't worry about it. All right, stay strong, guys. Stay strong. Take an antacid so that your stomach won't hurt in these next few weeks, and breathe easy, because it's gonna be tough. All right. But with that said, a la Madrid. Y nada más, my friends.
This has been Y Nada Más, al Real Madrid Podcast.